who's one of our principal application DBAs from our application engineering team. And after I go through the presentation, he'll be available to answer any technical questions that you may have that I may not be able to. So again, as Lisa mentioned, the topic of today's presentation is upgrading to Oracle eBusiness Suite Release 12. And what we're going to talk about today are some of the trade-offs between upgrading to version 12.13 versus 12.2 and some of the things that you need to be aware of in making that decision. One thing that we're not going to talk about today is functional aspects of the upgrade. Obviously, that's a massive topic and something that we're not going to have time to cover today, but we are going to be doing a webinar on new features in 12.2 in the next month or two. So with that, I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about data intensity for those of you who are not entirely familiar with us. We are an Oracle Platinum partner. We were founded in 2001. We're headquartered here in Bedford, Massachusetts with 12 offices around the world. We're actually founded as an application management company. So we provide 24/7 application management services. We're focused on Oracle's products, and we've actually got specialized skills across more than 30 Oracle technologies and applications. Back in 2004, we started hosting Oracle apps, and we purpose-built a cloud platform that's really engineered to support the unique requirements of many of those applications. So things like eBusiness Suite, Hyperion, Business Intelligence, Agile, Fusion Middleware. And we made a significant investment in security, compliance, and automation as part of that. One of the things that our team's been working on pretty extensively over the last 5 or 6 months is incorporating all the new features of Release 12.2 into our automation platform. It's been a pretty exciting time for us, and hopefully you'll enjoy the rest of the presentation as we get through some of the technical details. Just a couple more things from a statistical standpoint. We've got about 275 technical resources, about 150 Oracle application DBAs that work with us. We've got over 140 cloud hosting and application management customers today, over 3,000 databases and applications under management, and we've supported a ton of both implementations as well as upgrades. We've been through 40 full lifecycle Release 12 upgrades at this point, along with over 100 application data center migrations. So customers that are moving applications between their internal data center and our data center, between another provider's data center and our data center, between another provider's data center and their own data center. So we've got a lot of experience moving things around, upgrading them, basically the full application lifecycle. So before we get started, I wanted to give everyone a quick chance to answer a quick poll. And the poll is, what version of Oracle eBusiness Suite are you on? We've always got questions from customers asking what the mix is today, and it's something that I'm curious about, especially with the people who are on the phone for this webinar, what version of the apps you guys are already on. Just give it a couple seconds there. Thanks, everybody, for contributing to the poll. Appreciate that. And with that in mind, we will continue with our presentation agenda. So as far as what we're going to be covering today, we're going to talk very quickly about the Oracle eBusiness Suite support timeline. I'm assuming most of you are familiar with how Oracle support works, what the timeline is for 11i, for Release 12, but we'll go through that quickly just to set the stage. We're going to talk through the Release 12.2 technical features, along with some of the infrastructure implications and the management implications of those technical changes. We're going to go through a few slides on upgrading to 12.13 versus 12.23, some of the pros and cons. Talk through a little bit about how we help our customers get through that upgrade. And then, as Lisa mentioned, we'll be taking some time for a Q&A. Any questions that we can't answer or that we don't get to during the webinar, we will most certainly take the time to reply in detail to you afterwards, so you'll be hearing from us one way or the other. So you get started talking about Oracle support. So Oracle's lifetime support policy mandates that premier support will be 5 years from the general availability date, and extended support will go 3 years beyond that. So the extended support is basically a higher cost than the premier support. There are some limitations with third-party certifications, but you're basically having the benefit of 8 years of support from a general release date. Sustaining support is indefinite, but the downside of that is that typically there are no new patches, regulatory updates, or data fixes or certifications offered as part of that. Now, as most of you are aware, the support timeline for 11i changed that policy a bit. 11i was released in 2004, and extended support was completed in 2013, but Oracle has offered an exception to their sustaining support policy. So through December 2015, they will provide support for Priority 1 production issues, critical patch updates, United States 1099 updates, as well as a number of jurisdiction payroll updates. But they do require that Oracle customers are on a minimum baseline. So it's a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last year or two that hasn't been related to R12 has been related to getting customers on the minimum baseline. But the clock is ticking. So the support timeline for release 12, it looks like most of you, from a poll standpoint, already are on either 12.1, at least 50% are already on 12.0, 12, or 12.1.1, 12.1.2, or 12.1.3. Pretty small percentage are still on 11.5.10. But the bottom line here is that support for 12.0 expires at the end of 2014, so January 2015. 12.1 is running through December 2019, and 12.2 runs through September 2021. And again, there are some exceptions to the sustaining support policy for 12.0 as well, but I think most customers at this point are at least in the planning stages of their release 12 upgrade. So, what are some of the implications here for your company's upgrade plans as you're thinking through 12.1.3 versus 12.2 and the extra 2 years of support that you're getting there? So these next couple of slides, I'm going to talk quickly through some of the technical changes between 11i to version 12 and then version 12 to 12.1. So the biggest one is that from going from 11i to release 12, the 9i application server was released with application server 10G. And the big change there was going from Oracle JServe to Oracle Containers for Java for all the servers and JSPs. It introduced a new application tier file system layout and introduced the concept of an instance home, or instop, for read-write segmentation. The new Oracle Process Manager and notification server that was created, JInitiator went away, and Oracle was delivering 10GR2 database by default. Going from 12.0 to 12.1, there weren't a ton of technical changes. Database version that was delivered was higher. The JDK that was delivered was higher. And a new feature was really the Endeca extensions for Oracle E-Business Suite. And a lot of the utilities that had been launched with R12 were really reached a maturation level. So application tier file system sharing support, DMZ and load balancing support, some of the advanced configuration wizards, and a number of auto-config enhancements. So the auto-config stuff usually lags behind the initial release somewhat. Going from 12.1 to 12.2, some of the high-level technical changes, biggest one being the introduction of WebLogic for all the Java components. WebLogic is already embedded in a number of the 11G Fusion middleware and some of the applications, business intelligence, agile, etc. So people should be somewhat familiar with that if you're using some of those edge products. There's a new web UI that is referred to as Skyros that replaces the old Swan paradigm in earlier versions of release 12. The biggest and most exciting thing, obviously, is online patching, and that's what most people are interested in 12.2 for. So it's the concept of having users online working in the system while patches are being applied and then just taking a small downtime. It's an enhanced publish integration repository, so your developers who are writing code have the access to SOAP and REST APIs that are available. Improve Web Center and Beeple integrations, and then one of the things that's on everybody's mind these days is improving mobile functionality. So Oracle still is lagging a little bit behind there, but they're doing some things that are trying to get them caught up. I want to talk a little bit about the brief history of the eBusiness Suite application tier. Oracle licensed the Orion application server in 2001, which is really where OC4J came from, and that was embedded into eBusiness Suite 11.5.10. Oracle acquired VEA Systems in 2008 and really did it for the functionality of WebLogic, which was a much more robust application server than the IAS platform. Now, eBusiness Suite itself uses two application servers, one that is for all of the Java components and processes, which is OC4J, now WebLogic, and one that is for forms and reports. So 12.2 from an application standpoint is really a fruition of 5 years of effort by Oracle post-integration to replace IAS with WebLogic. And it was a very long road, but it is only for the Java components. So modules for Oracle eBusiness Suite, even in 12.2, are deployed out of what's referred to as the Oracle Application Server 10.1.2 Oracle Home. Form Web Executables also deployed from there. So all the form services run out of Oracle Application Server for forms and reports. However, all the major services are now started out of the Fusion Middleware Oracle Home, which is WebLogic. It's based on the 11G PS5 version, which is 11.1.1.6. So key changes from earlier releases, the 10.1.2 Oracle Home is replacing the 8.06 Oracle Home. Fusion Middleware Oracle Home is replacing the 10.1.3 based Oracle Home and versions prior to 12.2. One of the nice things about WebLogic, they come up with the WebLogic scripting tool. So it's a command line scripting tool to manage WebLogic, similar to the OPMN interface that managed Internet Application Server. It's Jython based. They have on and offline modes, so any kind of automation as far as startup and shutdown use this method. Both Java 6 and Java 7 are supported with both 12.1 and 12.2. 64-bit Java on the application tier nodes, 32-bit for concurrent processing, forms, and auto-config nodes. And one thing that just came up with the release of 12.2.3, I mentioned before, auto-config usually lags a little bit. Auto-config does now support WebLogic with 12.2.3. This is just another slide showing what auto-config is used to manage. So the database Oracle Home, some of the components of WebLogic, and then the eBusiness Suite stuff that it's always done. There's still some things that are managed directly. So big doings from a user interface standpoint. Swan is gone. The Skyros UI is the new paradigm within the eBusiness Suite. The nice thing is that Oracle has given a profile option to control page rendering. So you have the option of doing kind of a scaled down HTML version, a plain text version, and a number of different flavors of the Skyros UI. The biggest benefit here is rich table interaction. So you can now, from within the Business Suite forms, resize, detach, and reorder tables. So it's a much more flexible interface than anybody's seen in the past, much more conducive to mobile applications. From a D-support standpoint, I know we're not talking about functionality here, but I did want to point this out, that Daily Business Intelligence, Balanced Scorecard, and the Embedded Data Warehouse are no longer available within the eBusiness Suite. So I don't know very many customers, if any, who are still using those technologies, maybe one or two that I've run across in the last couple of years, but most people are not using those anymore, but they are no longer available. From a technology standpoint, again, starting with the release 12.1 for some and 12.2 for others, single sign-on 10G, Oracle Internet Directory 10G, Beeple 10G, and Portal 10G are all no longer supported. So you have to be on the 11G version of all of your Fusion middleware stack. So after the UI, the next big change, and probably the most beneficial change for most customers, is online patching. And that's really what most customers are interested in understanding how that works. So historically, eBusiness Suite has not been able to support minimizing patching downtime. So there's always been a way to use a staged application tier file system to apply patches to application binaries while the users are still online. But during downtime, you still had to apply the database driver. So usually that was a very extensive period to have down, especially for shops that were 24/7. And a lot of customers pushed back on Oracle for a very long time to address the issue. But there were a number of technical barriers to doing that, biggest one being database level. They have actually solved the problem. Of course, with trade-offs like with anything, and we're going to get through some of those trade-offs over the next couple of pages. So online patching is allowing users to work while patches are being applied. That includes portions of the patches that are updating the data. And Oracle is able to accomplish this in two ways. From an application tier standpoint, they are now maintaining 3 file systems for code: a run edition, a patch edition, and a non-edition version. So the run edition and the patch edition trade off as you apply patches. So if you have file system 1 and file system 2, file system 1 will be the run edition, file system 2 will be the patch edition until you actually apply a patch, and then they'll swap. So that's one of the challenges of managing in this new paradigm, is you've got 2 file systems that are doing different things at different times. And then from a database standpoint, 11GR2, they're making use of something called edition-based redefinition, acronyms EBR. And basically what is happening is there are shadow tables and triggers that are used for updating data that's updated by patches. So while users in the system, they're using the runtime version of the data, and then during the cutover phase, the functionality is in place to basically take the patch version and merge it into the run version. So there are pretty significant ramifications to all this. A 300% increase in application tier storage capacity. So you need the place to do all the copies and make sure that the file systems have enough space so that you don't run out while you're in the middle of a patching cycle. 5 to 25% increase in database size. So as you're applying these patches and you're doing these data updates, that all increases the size of your database. And you don't get to reclaim that until you do an export-import. There's certainly going to be additional CPU and memory requirements, longer and unpredictable execution time for pre-patch and online activities. And that's really because you're doing most of the patching initiative up front while the users are online, and you have to start far in advance of when your downtime is to make sure that all of that online activity is done by the time your downtime window hits. The great thing about it is that there is minimal downtime during the actual cutover. So, if you are a 24/7 manufacturer or you have a limited downtime window, you're ensuring that you're taking as little as possible to when you actually decide to put that patch into production. And there is a whole new process for troubleshooting the patch cycle. So Oracle's done a pretty good job with their documentation this time around, making sure that the checklists are in place for, if such and such happens, you need to do this, this, and that. And that's all specified in the maintenance guides that were released with 12.2. So how do you prepare for online patching? One of the biggest things that you need to do and that you need to have your teams do is review all the documentation for development guidelines. There are a lot of changes to the way that customers develop code that are going to be required for getting to 12.2. All customizations have to be compliant with the edition-based redefinition. They have to be compliant so that they don't break the running version of the application when you're applying a patch. And in order to do that, you can run something called online patching readiness reports, and that shows you what EBR violations, any kind of naming convention violations. All of your customizations have to run through the app schema. So there's a lot of detail there, and I'm intentionally not getting into that during this presentation because there is so much to cover. But that is one of the things that we're starting to help our customers with, is making sure that their development standards are updated so that, as they are developing new customizations, they're compliant with the future paradigm, and then customers can slowly migrate their older customizations to the new paradigm as well. But the first step is knowing what those requirements are and making sure that you have a program in place to track them and to manage them. Next thing you need to do is really update your actual patching procedures. So there's no more concept of shut down, apply, and start up. The process now is fivefold: preparation, application, finalizing, and then users are online during all those periods. Then the actual cutover period where the users are offline and systems are restarted, and then a cleanup phase that removes all of the shadow tables and all of the file systems that are no longer in use, resets the run and patch file systems at the application tier, etc. couple of things to keep in mind for online patching. You want to continue to schedule any kind of short-running patches for off hours, and use something called process prioritization and database resource manager to maximize the patching process. For any kind of long-running jobs that you know are going to take place over a 24-hour period, you may have users online while that's happening. You also want to use process prioritization and DBRM there to minimize impact to users while patches are in process. So you don't want your patch process to step on the performance that your users are seeing. The downside is that this will slow down patching, so it is going to be very important for customers to leave plenty of time in advance to get these patches applied. Applying a patch in a non-production environment and seeing what that timing is like is not going to be the same thing as applying to a live production system where you've got a couple hundred concurrent users logged in. So it is going to be kind of a trial and error type thing. We'll be providing some additional guidance as we get more and more customers on 12.2 around what our best practice recommendations are. So the next couple slides are going to be on infrastructure and maintenance considerations. So from an infrastructure standpoint, the biggest thing that you need to deal with is storage growth. You're going to see storage growth across all environments. As I mentioned before, about triple for your application to your file system. One way to minimize the impact of this is by leveraging things like snapshots, deduplication, and thin provisioning. Most customers are going to be impacted by whether or not their storage supports that or not, and how good their storage admins are at being able to use it. Within our cloud environment, we've done a lot of work around storage utilization and backup utilization, and making sure that customers aren't using storage that they don't need. So we make heavy use of snapshots during our cloning process. So even though your production database may be increasing by 30%, you can be rest assured that your non-production environments that are running off those snapshots aren't going to cause you to incur more costs for additional storage. There's going to be additional I/O required for cloning because of the fact that there are these additional file systems, so something else to keep in mind. Again, that's only applicable for 12.2. Understanding the ramifications of the file system layout on your storage, and that includes both volume naming and cloning. So as you're working with your storage admins on this new paradigm, you want to make sure that the things that you're doing today in terms of cloning volumes and things like that aren't breaking as a result of the new paradigm. It's going to be very important to review your system performance. If you're in a situation where you are already maxed out with your database processing, for example, you're going to want to make sure that before you go down this road that you are adding CPU to your database server. Most customers during a Release 12 upgrade, they're taking it as an opportunity to also update their application and database server hardware as well as their operating systems. So it is going to be important to make sure that you consider all of those aspects when you're planning your upgrade. One thing, if you are still on 11.5.10, you're going to be on a 32-bit application tier, and going to a 64-bit application tier is something that most of our customers are choosing to do at the time of upgrade. Next thing is something I mentioned before, discussing process prioritization with your OS admins. And again, that's making sure that, whether it's off hours or during business hours, that the patch process itself is updated so that it is either prioritized above user requests if it's off hours, or below user requests if it's on hours. For customers that are not 24/7 shops, and you're still going to run your patching process off hours for smaller patches, you don't need to so much worry about increasing CPU and memory resources. You're still going to be safe. The issue is really going to be for long-running patches that take more than 24 hours. You are going to be in a situation where that patching process is running while users are logged in. So that process prioritization is going to be very important. And then the last thing is to make sure that you involve your network team. There's an additional port pool involved because of the two file systems. From a load balancing standpoint, that really isn't necessarily an issue, but you're going to have firewall rules potentially that need to be updated to account for those additional ports. A lot of customers don't necessarily have firewalling between the application server and the database server. But for customers that do, and in our hosted environment, something that we've had to consider. So from a technical management standpoint, obviously the biggest issue here, whether if you're on 11i and moving to R12.1 or 12.2, and even if you're on 12.1 and you're moving to 12.2, your DBAs are going to require significant investment in training. We've spent the last several years here really focused on getting our folks up to speed on WebLogic, and that's going to be a key aspect of getting your DBAs up to speed. So having them get through the concepts guide, get through the maintenance guides, really getting into the WebLogic documentation, sending them to hands-on training sessions. If you are one of our customers, working with our resources and our DBAs to get up to speed as well. There's definitely an impact to the client here for both the JRE as well as browser support. So, as you're getting into the planning stages, don't neglect the desktop. Make sure that your desktop folks are aware of what's going on and that they've got plenty of time. They need to update their builds or their rollout processes for new JREs. Make sure you give them time to do that. Things that are specific to 12.2, online patching, there's a completely different patching tool, AD-op versus AD-patch. You're really going to need to understand as you start going down this road, understanding the unpredictability of applying patches. So you're going to have to do a bunch before you start seeing what the ramifications are, what time you're going to need, what kind of lead time you're going to need before your downtime to make sure those patches are successfully applied. And then also understanding how long that cutover phase takes. So your cutover phase should theoretically be the same no matter what patch you're applying, making sure that that's well understood and that you're giving yourself plenty of time, especially when it comes to things like trying to troubleshoot the cutover period. If something were to go wrong during the cutover phase and you need to troubleshoot something, giving yourself enough time that you have at least a little bit of time to troubleshoot. And then the last piece is really WebLogic monitoring and management, so log collection and interpretation, because there's a lot that's going on within those WebLogic logs that you're going to need to deal with from a user session standpoint as well. One of the questions that was answered that we saw that I'll touch on now, since we're still talking about online patching a bit, it is not possible to go to not utilize the online patching methodology. So that is something that is going to be a requirement. Again, you can do it so that it's off hours. If you're an 8x5 shop, you can still do it off hours. You can still patch on the weekends to avoid any kind of user impact. But it is something that you're not going to be able to get away from the multiple file systems and the shadow tables and things like that. So upgrading to 12.2, a couple of key things here. Your eBusiness Suite release has to be at 11.5.10.2, 12.04, or 12.1.1 running on a 10GR2 database. So that's going to take you to the 12.2 release, and then from there, you have to apply the 12.2.3 upgrade pack. Customers who are already on 11GR2 have a significant advantage because you can skip a number of database migration steps. So, earlier I believe I mentioned that it's a good thing to get your 11GR2 upgrade done prior to undergoing the 12.2 upgrade. Database 12c is not certified yet, so that is something that that we're anxiously awaiting. There's been talk about it, and we're expecting it in the next couple of months. One important thing, if you're looking to do an upgrade without assistance, the Upgrade Advisor and Maintenance Wizard tools are not yet available as of yesterday when we finalized putting this together. Both of those tools are something that a lot of customers have utilized, that our upgrade team utilizes to really speed the process and communicate to end users what they need to be concerned with. So one of the things that we've had to do is go through that process on our own, and our upgrade team has taken the time to go through all the steps manually and create our own versions of those processes. And again, as I just mentioned, you have to upgrade to 12.2 first and then apply the 12.2.3 update pack. And that new user interface is just released in 12.2.3. So still, probably 2 months old at this point. So our next poll, appreciate it if you folks could spend just a quick minute and answer the question of when you're planning on upgrading. We're curious to see if people have upgrades planned for this year or if they're going to push it to the very last minute. Some of the things that we're going to be talking about on the next slides are, if you are planning an upgrade during a certain period, what version should that be to? I'll give everybody just a minute to reply here. Appreciate your input. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate that. So 12.1 or 12.2, regardless of which version you move to, and we've got a number of 12.1.3. I think we have probably 7 12.1.3 upgrades in process at this point. We've got one 12.2 upgrade in process at this point, and a couple of 12.2 installations in process at this point. So we still got a lot of 12.1.3 activity. But regardless of which version you move to, make sure you upgrade your database to 11GR2 sooner rather than later. And don't wait to start remediating your chemicals. Get your development standards updated. Even if you don't plan on doing any real chemical remediation, get started on the process now so that you have the outline done by the time you really want to start work. And make sure that you get your developers trained as well. 12.2 is definitely a bigger initiative than 12.1. Going from 11i to 12.1 introduced a lot of conceptual changes in terms of the application tier, but at the end of the day, a lot of the processes were still the same. There were a lot more tools available, but the cloning process, the auto-config process, the patching process were all still similar. The patching process, the way that it's changed in 12.2 is very significant. And so it is a bigger initiative. So the question that everybody's asking is, do you take on a larger initiative in the short term and cover yourself through 2021, which is when extended support ends for 12.2, or do you break the initiative into 2 or more manageable pieces? And there are a bunch of flavors to that. So you can do your database upgrade, then your 12.1.3, and then your 12.2. You can do it all at once, etc. So if you're on 11.5.10.2, you're going to want to definitely upgrade to 12.2 to be supported through 2021. From our vantage point, if you're just about to get started on an upgrade right now, it's worth considering 12.2. As I mentioned, we've got a number of customers who weren't comfortable going to 12.2 because of its newness, and I tend to be more conservative myself, so I may opt to go that way as well. But if you're still in the planning stages now, you haven't kicked something off, you're going to be starting an upgrade next year. At that point, 12.2.3 will be pretty stable. There may be 12.2.4 out by that point, and it will make sense to go to 12.2. If you're on 12.0, if you're looking to upgrade in 2014, the path of least resistance is for you to go to 12.1.3 and then plan on a 2016 upgrade to 12.2. And that way you still will be fully supported, but you'll still have the planning time to be able to get to 12.2. Again, if you're looking to upgrade in 2015, by that point it will probably be worthwhile just to go straight to 12.2. For customers who are on 12.1 right now, and you're not on 12.1.3, start planning on your 12.1.3 maintenance pack. And start preparations for 12.2. Again, you've got a couple years before you're going to be pushed to that. And then if you run 24/7, it's definitely advantageous for you to at least start looking at 12.2, maybe start a proof of concept, just for the availability benefit. We work with a lot of 24/7 customers that not having the requirement to take, a 12 or 14 or 16-hour downtime to apply a sizable patch is going to be a very big benefit to them. So our upgrade services, there are a number of things that we're doing for customers today. We've been doing R12 upgrades for a very long time now, since I started with the company in September of 2006, and we did our first R12 installation for a beta customer just after I started, and we've been doing the upgrades pretty consistently since 2007, 2008. One of the things that customers asked us to do is prepare a presentation similar to this, or document that is an executive summary of the customer's current state, what their options are, and what the return on investment is. Second thing is an infrastructure assessment. So because of the fact that we have our cloud team, we do have infrastructure people available if you're interested in having somebody come in and take a look at whether or not your infrastructure will support your upgrade, whether it's a 12.1 or 12.2, we can certainly do that. Functional assessment is a huge part of what we're doing right now, evaluating chem-leads, looking at module functionality, doing gap fit analyses, actually doing the chem-lead remediations. That's a key part of getting to release 12.2. Training customers on the new development standards and making sure that that the work that's being done by their development teams is compliant with the new features. And the biggest piece of what we're doing right now is really upgrade planning, management, and execution. We've just started working on proofs of concept upgrades to 12.2.3 now that that's released. We've got that built in our labs. We've actually got that applied to our first customer system, and it's gone fairly well. And then the last service that we're providing is a 12.2.3 cloud vision environment. So we have a shared vision environment that we use internally here for our resources. We're spinning up dedicated ones for customers for prospects, if that's something that you're interested in. And that can either be a private over VPN or public over the internet. So why use us? The biggest thing that I think we offer as a company is the fact that we have a heavy focus on engineering. So we've split out our engineering and operations team, and our engineering team are the guys who actually take the time to go through and develop the run books for all these different flavors of upgrade. They're all tested in our labs. We have developed significant automation, our Fusion DBA platform, as we call it, for doing things like pre-checks and post-check validations. So it's a lot more efficient for us to run a program, an upgrade program, because of some of that automation. We actually employ a dedicated 24/7 team of DBAs that specifically do upgrades and application migrations. So whether they're platform migrations or data center migrations, that team is led by a group of DBAs with an average of 20 years experience. And we've done more than 40 R12 upgrades, and that's all different flavors of R12 upgrades, from 11i to release 12, 11i to 12.1, all the way up to 12.1 to 12.2. We can either do the upgrade in your data center. If you're hosted with us, obviously we'll be using our data center to do that. If you are interested in doing a proof of concept upgrade, we can actually take a full backup from you and do the upgrade in our cloud, and you can actually do your testing there too as well. So this is the last poll of the day, and I appreciate, again, everybody's responses to this. The topic of this one is, what version would you be going to, 12.1.3 or 12.2? You could take a quick second to fill that out. I'd appreciate it. Thanks very much for doing that. All right, and with that, we'll talk through a couple of next steps. If you have any specific technical questions that we can't answer during the Q&A that's about to follow, you can feel free to contact me at mcaruso@dataintensity.com. I will be sure to get back to you. You can reach out to sales@dataintensity.com or your account executive to get more information about any of the services that I talked about. And stay tuned for Martha Ho's webinar on the functional change that's coming up in the next month or two. So with that, we are going to turn it over to our question and answer. So I think the first question that we have here is about whether it's possible to move to 12.2 without using the online patching functionality. That was one of the first things that I asked when I saw that it was released, is if they still supported the original paradigm, and it is not supported, so you do have to use the new patching paradigm. And again, as I mentioned, it is possible to still run those patches so that they're done off hours and not impact users, not have to worry about it, but you're still going to get affected by the storage requirements.
Yep, I'd like to add one thing. So yes, you'll have to use patch edition, run edition, so your storage requirements will increase, and by default, you have to follow a new patching cycle. Oracle provided the so-called online patching, not online patching, but hot patching, which can be done with application down, similar to old way, but the applicability of this method is very limited. It's mostly used for patching AD technology stack. And most patches that will be released for 12.2 EBS environment will have to be applied using online mode.
Thanks, Oleg. Next question that we have here is whether or not our developers on our functional service desk team are already using 12.2 standards. I believe they are. I'll need to confirm that with Martha Ho, but I'll get back to the asker of that question after the webinar is over. The next question is about 12.2 WebLogic licensing. So that's actually a really good question. And WebLogic licensing works similarly to the way that application server licensing did for earlier versions. So eBusiness Suite comes with a runtime license for WebLogic Standard Edition, and then there are requirements for going to either WebLogic Enterprise Edition or WebLogic Suite, depending on what functionality you're using. Most customers can get away with the WebLogic Enterprise Edition, but obviously the pricing for that is different than IIS, and Oracle is actually in the process of converting licenses from IIS to WebLogic, as customers are going through their upgrade process. So if you do have a license purchase that you know you're going to need to make, it's something that you may want to talk to your sales rep about. We also have the ability to resell those licenses as well. So if it's something, if you're already a customer or want to be a customer, you can talk to us about it, and we'd be happy to help you out there. WebLogic licensing is more expensive than Internet Application Server, again, depending on which version of the WebLogic licensing you're getting. Somebody is asking a question about versions pre-11.5.10. You certainly can get to 12.2 from previous versions, but you're not going to be able to upgrade directly. So there would be a process of upgrading to release 12.1 and then going from there to 12.2. So it's probably going to be a multi-step approach. Another question here about WebLogic training. About general training for application DBAs other than just pure WebLogic training. There aren't a lot of trainings available right now that are sponsored by Oracle for some of the new features. So the best way to get training is by coming to a provider like us and asking us to come in for a day to sit down with you and go through some of the new features and functionality. But Most of the training, I think, you can get from reading the maintenance guide and really understanding the new tools that are out there. There's a ton of information on the new online patching functionality and troubleshooting, and it's really about just combing through those documents and getting your procedures updated there. In addition to basic WebLogic training, there's also SOA training that you can go to. So there's the integrated SOA gateway. The functionality for that's expanded pretty significantly in 12.2. It's much more robust now, so that would also be something that's worthwhile doing. Somebody's asked a question about, is 12.2.3 stable yet? I would say it's not so bug-ridden that you can't use it. Whether it's completely stable yet at this point, I would say probably not. I'd still give it another month or two before giving it the clear enough type of stamp of approval. As far as, we have a question here about budgeting time going from 12.1.3 to 12.2.3. The patching time for that, and Oleg, I'm not sure if you have an answer to this. We did one recently that took, I believe, about 36 hours to do. I'll actually follow up with this with some more statistics to all the attendees to the webinar to give a little bit more flavor about that.
I would like to answer a question about which tool should be used. All patches released for 12.2.3 have to be applied using new ADOP tool. And default method of applying patch is online method. And when you apply patch in online method, your application services have to be up, or at least administrative service should be up, at least. On the back end, ADOP still uses AD patch. Basically, ADOP is a wrapper on top of many other tools, including AD patch itself. So what you should understand is AD patch is no longer directly available for your application DBA, and your application DBA will have to use ADOP for applying all 12.2 patches.
There's another question here about the underlying data model and whether it's changed significantly between 12.1.3 and 12.2. I am not aware of any significant changes. I haven't gone through the technical reference manual to validate that, but that was not one of the major impacts of 12.2.
There are a couple of new schemas in database in 12.2 to support online patching capabilities. Plus, probably the most important thing to know about 12.2 is you're not longer allowed to directly work with application tables because they could be changed while you are working with them. So you have to work through the views, and all your modifications should be done through the API, which is compatible with online patching. So that's the major changes.
As far as the 12.2 upgrade, it's not necessary to get change on WLST right away. It's not all that complicated, so I don't think it will take all that long to learn to get up to speed on that. There's another question here about 12.2 WebLogic standard licensing and whether it's possible to host custom web services on it. It is not. So if you're using any kind of custom services on the eBusiness Suite, you will need a WebLogic Enterprise Edition license to do that. Obviously, if you've got external web services that are accessing delivered functionality, that doesn't apply. But if you have things that you're deploying from within eBusiness Suite that are custom, that will require an Enterprise Edition license. There's a question about daily business intelligence and being discontinued in 12.2. Business intelligence applications are basically the next generation of that. So that's really what customers are moving to. So we'll provide a little bit more detail on our responses after the fact, but that's kind of the long and short of that answer. 12.2 does support standard APIs. That's that integration repository that I mentioned previously, so you can actually go in and see everything that's available for all application modules. It's a really neat feature. You can actually see all of those exposed APIs in that catalog. So your developers will have a really nice toolbox available to them to be able to utilize. And again, that's both for SOAP and REST. We've got a number of questions about development standards, and again, I'm gonna defer those for now, and we'll provide a written response to some of those in our feedback for the webinar. Somebody's asked a question about WebLogic monitoring and a recommended tool. Obviously, there's a ton of custom monitoring out there. We use a combination of Oracle Cloud Control and HP's SiteScope tool. We use them for different reasons. They both work really well. The Cloud Control tool has pretty neat functionality in it for managing WebLogic as well as monitoring it. There's a question here about the number of modules and whether that impacts the time to upgrade from 12.1.3 to 12.2. That it definitely will affect the time it takes. You're going to have additional data that you're going to have to run through as part of the upgrade, so it will increase the time. One option that you have during an upgrade to either 12.1 or 12.2 is to delay converting some of the historical data, so you can start off by upgrading 6 months worth of data, bring the system online, and then continue updating data in the background. You can do it, after 12 months or 18 months. It's configurable. So that is one tool that's in your toolbox as part of something like that. So one of the questions here is about the value of the upgrade, aside from online patching. From a technical standpoint, I think the new functionality that will enable additional mobile capabilities, the integrated SOA components are two things that are pretty significant. The web services is pretty significant. But from a downtime standpoint, that online patching is definitely the key. There's a ton of functional changes as well in 12.2 and also in 12.1 that are really the key drivers, whether your business is going to want to make that upgrade. And that's outside the scope of this webinar, but really the keys lie in the functional side of things. So there is a question here about writing things against the tables directly. Again, Oleg mentioned that any customization should be going against views and not tables, and that's to make sure that you don't break the run version of the application. The 12.2 version directly does not support online patching, but going from 12.2.1 to 12.2.2 or 12.2.2 to 12.2.3 does use online patching. And we actually just got through doing one of those exercises. I believe it took about 18 hours to get the 12.2.3 release pack applied. There is a question here about R12 integration with 12c Cloud Control. In terms of monitoring, the functionality is in place to be able to do all the things that you could do in previous releases. The actual functionality for doing cloning, all of the things that were built into 12c to improve management are still available, so that shouldn't change at all. I don't think there are any significant new features that were launched as part of it, but again, I haven't spent a ton of time looking at Cloud Control. There's a question here about SOA licensing included with 12.2. Again, if you're using the integrated SOA gateway, that is included with the license. You don't have to purchase a separate SOA server. Again, there are some nuances around when you need to be fully licensed versus when you can use the runtime license. So that's probably a question that probably requires a little bit more involvement. Last question, which is does 12.2 support OBIEE 10G? I'm going to have to get back to you on that and with a more intelligent answer, but I will do that. So any of these questions that we did not answer in the webinar, we will be responding to directly as part of our follow-up here. So we'll be sending out the link to the presentation and a summary of any questions that were asked. And I wanted to thank everybody for attending, and appreciate everybody's time, and look forward to chatting with everybody again. Looking forward to hearing from anybody who wants any additional services from us. Lisa?
Thanks, Mark. Looks like that's all the time we have. If we didn't get to your question here again, we'll follow up with you directly. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. You will receive an email that contains a link to the session recording as soon as it's available. And on behalf of Mark and Data Intensity, thank you again for attending. Goodbye.